Gen Z women are not doing okay right now. 40% are depressed, 60% are dealing with anxiety issues, and almost all of them have dealt with a mental health crisis at some point in their lives. And they're not doing all that great economically either. But why? On the surface level, it appears as if a young woman growing up today has everything you could ask for. Women are doing better now than ever when it comes to their careers, their education, their feminist support systems, and of course, unlimited options on the dating market. Or so it seems. If there's anything you should know about me, it's that I care about objective facts and truth above all else. The most frustrating thing about all these Gen Z gender war videos is that it's all just a bunch of rage baiting, blaming the other side with no real solutions being offered. So, our mission in this video is to discover the unfiltered, unbiased truth, and that's what's ultimately going to open the door to a better path. No being a red-pilled misogynist woman hater, no being a blue-pilled white knight simp either. If you clicked on this video expecting a full-on modern women are trash video, I'm sorry to disappoint you. There's literally a million other videos bashing modern women out there, and I don't think another one is going to change anything. I think it's time to find out the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about the Gen Z gender wars. You would think that with all these feminist initiatives, DEI, the Equal Pay Act, getting more women into college, and so on and so forth, young women today would be absolutely swimming in cash right now, right? But unfortunately, the numbers and evidence show that that's not really the case. The evidence shows that Gen Z women, just like men, are being absolutely hammered by rising living costs, stagnant wages, financial stress, and, well, pretty much everything else we talk about on this channel. Now, you could make the case that every one of these sources are just woke corporations being run by feminists, and, well, I mean, I don't really have a great answer to that, I guess. Maybe it's true, I don't know, but I'm working with what I have here. That being said, why is it that so many young men on the other side have so little empathy for these issues? In fact, if anything, they've shifted overwhelmingly conservative and actively hate feminism. While being a still somewhat young man myself who went through this phase not that long ago, I think I could shed some pretty good insight on this. Part 2, the young male perspective. So I'm pretty fortunate, privileged, and blessed to be in the position I am today, and I can admit that. And I can even admit part of that is a male privilege, which we'll get into a bit later. I have a pretty successful YouTube channel, which pays me decently. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm doing well all things considered, especially in this economy. But it's because of this now that I even have the mental bandwidth to have empathy for others in the first place, and I'm trying to be a better person with this. But things weren't always this way for me, though. In my early 20s, I had the misfortune of graduating into the 2008 financial crisis, where college was too expensive, I had no job, no career prospects, and no money. And this is the exact situation a lot of young men find themselves in today. And when you tell someone in that position that they're privileged, that, they're unfairly earning more money than they should be, that they have it so good, this is just insanely out of touch and, more importantly, not reflective of their reality at all. I remember the whole gender wage gap myth floating around when I was an unemployed 23-year-old. I was constantly being told that a woman was making 23% less than me or whatever for doing the same job. And I remember thinking to myself, what the actual hell? I mean, I can't even get a job in the first place. So what are we talking about here that they're paid less than me for doing the same job that I don't even have? Now, of course, being a little more mature these days and after having researched a lot of human history for all my videos, I can very well acknowledge that throughout history, women really did have an unfair deal in many aspects, and that's even putting it way too lightly, to be honest. And I do believe that certain aspects of this still permeate through society today and detrimentally affect young girls and women in society up until this day. But what you have to understand is that most of what you call quote-unquote male privilege were economic privileges, which pretty much overwhelmingly only benefit men of older generations, Things like making more money, getting more promotions and opportunities, etc. I mean, you only get to enjoy these privileges, so to speak, if the economy is even doing well enough in the first place and working as it should be, which it hasn't been doing for the last 20 years now. I mean, the economy's basically just been a total dumpster fire since 2008. There are really no privileges or benefits for anyone in this economy, men or women, and being hypothetically more likely to be promoted to CEO doesn't really help me if I can't even get an entry-level job to begin with. So you have a situation where young men who never lived in or experienced a world of privilege are being blamed for problems caused by older generations of men who did, being told they have an unfair advantage of earning more money when they can't even get a job to begin with. And yeah, under those circumstances, of course, they're going to turn on you. So, if we want to make progress for everyone, the first step is to acknowledge and empathize with each other's struggles more. And don't worry, I'm going to be doing it for the other side as well throughout this video. Hey guys, we set out on a mission during the summer to take down the biggest, most vile Gen Z hater, the Angry Guy. A straight up horrible human being who hates Gen Z so much, he even celebrates them dying. Thanks to you, we've gained a ton of ground on him over the summer, and we've set a new goal to surpass him in subscribers and defeat him once and for all by the end of the year. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us take down the biggest, most evil, final boss Gen Z hater. With your help, we can absolutely do it. Part 3, the zero-sum game. So why is this the case? And how did we get here? Well, the primary and biggest problem, in my opinion, is that literally no one on either side is capable of having an honest and potentially uncomfortable conversation about this. We still live in a fairy tale land where jobs are abundantly everywhere and we can just create opportunities for everyone without making some sacrifices. Let me give you my favorite example.
A number of people warned me against writing a book about boys and men, because it's such a fraught subject, particularly in politics right now, and because so many people were afraid that merely drawing attention to the problems of boys and men was implying somehow less effort being paid to girls and women, that it's framed as zero sum, and it's sort of a whose side are you on question.
So this is Richard Reeves, and you've probably seen him floating around if you follow the Gen Z Gender Wars content. Now, he's the perfect example of a guy who probably means well, but simply doesn't have the balls to just tell the truth, and as a result, he spews out these cliches that sound good but offer no real solution in sight. The reality of the situation is that with the way the world is right now, economic progress for either gender is, in fact, a zero-sum game. That is just unfortunately how math and numbers work. We all know the job market sucks major ass right now. Between globalization, automation, AI, and the overall terrible economy, there's a rapidly dwindling amount of jobs available for millions of Gen Z grads trying to enter the workforce. And on top of that, we know boomers aren't really leaving the workforce as well, so we have a situation where more and more young people are having to apply to fewer and fewer and fewer available jobs. And since the job market is such a brutal zero-sum game right now, this, by definition, means that if a young woman gets a job, a young man can't get the same job, and vice versa. And that's quite frankly the root of the problem right now. Layoffs are happening at record rates. AI is making entry-level jobs totally obsolete. We're trying to force every young person to get an education, to get a better job, when there's a rapidly diminishing amount of better jobs available. It is a zero-sum game in every sense of the word. If you have a young man and a young woman both competing for the same job, the reality is that one person is going to get the job and the other isn't. That's just the truth, and that's why it's important to be brutally honest with ourselves when diagnosing a problem if we want to get into an actual real solution. Part 4, the real solution. So, you've heard the phrase money is the root of all evil, and I'd like to add just a few slight modifications to be able to fully diagnose the problem. My modified version would go something like this. The expectation to make money is the root of all mental health crises for young people today. Okay, maybe not all, but at least 90 to 95% or so. Now, you've heard me talk a lot about the post-labor economy here on this channel. This is the not too distant future where AI and robots do the majority of the jobs, and humans are given a universal basic income or even high income to pursue whatever hobbies or passions they like. I've been a huge advocate for UBI specifically, but I haven't yet talked about how it'd be tremendously beneficial for both genders. And this is important. Jobs are a zero-sum game. I don't want to hear any delusional boomer economists with their outdated, "No, the economy isn't a zero-sum game. The rich are also job creators." All the evidence right now shows that technological progress has hit a tipping point, and it's only being used to displace jobs, not create them at this point. If anything, it's even a negative-sum game at this point. But here's where the breakthrough comes in. We're at war with each other now because we still live in the paradigm of capitalism, where your entire worth as a human being is determined by your career or how much money you make. And we've never thought anything else was even possible because this is just the world we've always lived in. And as a result, we're constantly at each other's throats, fighting this zero-sum game for the fewer and fewer amount of jobs available. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if our life stories did not have to be written solely by our job title? What would this mean for both genders? Well, this is where it gets really good, because now it no longer has to be a zero-sum game. Let's start with what it'd mean for women. The problem with modern feminism is that it still operates under the framework of work and capitalism. And as a result, it can only go as far as capitalism goes. And since capitalism is rapidly collapsing in on itself, as we all see, this means that unfortunately, it just can't go very far. For example, equal pay for equal work. Sounds great, right? And most reasonable people would agree with that. But under capitalism, men aren't making that much money anymore either, so equal pay simply means you get equal dogshit wages. Getting more women educated and into higher education is great, until you realize that under capitalism, more college-educated women simply just means, unfortunately, more women saddled with crushing student loan debt. The majority of the fifth-wave feminism movement was focused on making economic progress for women, which is fantastic, until the economy itself begins to collapse. A lot of women today also express frustration over the fact that they now have to essentially do two jobs. With how expensive everything has gotten, the man and the woman in the relationship both have to work now. That's just how it is. Now, theoretically, under these circumstances, housework should be evenly split as well, but that's rarely how it ends up working out. Women usually end up taking the majority of the domestic household chores, meaning they're stuck doing a lot of the unpaid labor. It's not always this way, but most of the time it is. A universal basic income would mean that women around the world, for the first time ever, would be compensated for all the unpaid housework they do. A big mistake both political sides make, in my opinion, is they both like to make massive, sweeping overgeneralizations about women. The left thinks every woman wants to be a hyper-career-oriented girl boss. The right thinks every woman secretly wants to be a 1950s trad wife with 3 kids. But, apparently feminism has brainwashed them otherwise, right? The truth is, women are not a monolith or a hive mind. Different women have different life goals, and that's okay. UBI would give women a lot more agency to choose their own path, or even a combination of the two, without being judged or stigmatized for it the way they are now. Most importantly of all, a universal, unconditional payment can restore dignity by acknowledging the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of employment status. And it can do a great job of combating negative stereotypes associated with traditional welfare systems. No longer would you be shamed for being a single mom or being called a gold digger for being a housewife. Now, a lot of guys have come to resent how women put so many unfair pressures and expectations on them to be financially successful, and I definitely empathize with this sentiment. But what they don't realize is that the way things are right now, women just kind of have no choice because they're struggling so much financially themselves. This economy has been a massive drag on all of us, for sure. But with a UBI, I think women would inherently feel more safe financially, and that would open a lot of them up to be able to prioritize other attributes like kindness, empathy, connection, and so forth. And so the constant boot of financial pressure on young men's necks all the time would greatly be alleviated through this as well. And this leads me now to my next point. Even though most young men these days seem to be against UBI as they tend to lean more conservative these days, I honestly think there's no group that would benefit more from and rightfully deserve a UBI more so than young men. Part 4. UBI and young men. Now, as a young man myself, I never hated progressivism and the abolition of gender roles. What I hated, however, was the pressure of traditional gender roles only really went away for women, but not for men. The pressure on women to be a traditional mother or housewife has gone down tremendously, and I think that's a good thing. But us men are still dealing with the same traditional pressures to become hyper rich and successful career-wise. We have all the insane financial pressures of our dads and granddads' generation without the golden easy mode economy they got to work with. In fact, we've known nothing but a total dogshit, nightmare difficulty economy our whole lives, and yet we're still held to the exact same standards. Now, unlike all these cringe red pill alpha males, I don't think the answer is to take away women's freedoms. I think the answer is to fight for our own. In the same way women are not a monolithic hive mind who all want to be trad wives, not every guy wants to be a top 1% Sigma male hustler either. I mean, it's not even realistic for most guys to do that in this economy. Some of us just want to chill, have our own hobbies, play sports, do the things we enjoy in life. I mean, God forbid, not everything has to be about money and careers all the time, right? And here we go once again. UBI in a post-labor world is really the only solution I can see here. It's long past time we separate intrinsic human value from economic output. You are not worthless as a human being just because you're not working a job, aka being exploited for capitalist profits. Now, from an economic standpoint, I think young men deserve a UBI more than anyone else because it's your jobs that have been completely eliminated by AI and automation the most. And of course, this all happened after we were lied to our whole lives. I mean, we were being told this whole time since we were 5 that if we just work hard and went to college, we'd easily land good jobs. At this point, hell, if nothing else, we deserve a UBI just as a punitive compensation for all the false advertising we were subjected to from the time we were kids. UBI might also be the only thing that can save us from the modern dating crisis. This economy has left us all in shambles, and as a result, dating feels so fake and superficial. Like everything is a transaction because everyone's just trying to squeeze every last penny out of each other at this point. But once again, in a post-scarcity, post-labor world, this just doesn't have to be the case anymore. We can start to build genuine, authentic connections again without money having to be attached to everything, without dating having to feel like a goddamn job interview all the time. Now, of course, this isn't going to solve every problem. There's still going to be gold diggers out there. There's still going to be fake, dishonest, and manipulative people. There's still going to be the typical frustrations with dating, as always. But I think at the very least, it'll be a huge step in the right direction for both young men and young women right now.